Alrighty. So thank you for joining us at the end of this long day. I've had the chance to to experience half of the day, and I thought it was so packed and so diverse. Our subject is basically do you guys hear? No, you have to turn it on. Yeah, no, maybe?
I can hear.
You can hear, good. Martina? Yes, now. So this panel is actually about the intersection between art and crypto culture or blockchain culture. And we will sort of play a little bit around that subject. So we have here on stage Penny, which is sitting right next to me. Penny is part of the Omsk social club, is a futuristic political AEI, unrealistic immersive action group. They use traditional methods of live action role and real gameplay to introduce states that could potentially be fiction or yet unlived reality for the players. They present their work internationally and also were part of the opening events of Transmediale 2019. Martina, who's sitting in the middle, is an independent lecturer for theater and media science. She was a professor of theater and media in the University of Bayreuth. She studied theater science and philosophy in Berlin and Paris. She completed training for theater and mime in Paris, and the focus of her scientific and artistic work is the relation between theater, performance, and digital media. At the end of our panel, we don't feel intimidated at all from the massive crowds on the other side of the screen at all. And the end of this panel is Jonas Lund. Jonas Lund is a Swedish artist who works with painting, sculpture, photography, websites, and performance, and critically reflects on contemporary network systems and power structures of control. His artistic practice involves creating systems and setting up parameters that oftentimes require engagement from the viewer. This results in gameplay artworks where tasks are executed according to algorithms or a set of rules. And I asked also our panelists to present themselves a little bit more in depth, because this conference is so diverse also in terms of the audience who's visiting. And so I actually wanted to ask the audience in the room from just roughly who comes from tech, blockchain background, or could potentially explain to a friend what blockchain is? Okay, yeah, good. Who comes from art background? Arts, yeah. Okay, good. So we know more or less. Good, we know.
There's no other option.
That's the two options here in the room.
What about the complete amateurs?
The complete amateurs?
Someone who got lost ended up here.
And actually was looking for the pommes. Okay, good. So let's start, shall we? Penny, do you feel like doing a little bit of an introduction about your work?
Sure. So I guess really we were invited to this panel because of a series that we did with Media Group Bitnix, which was a crypto rave series that ran for 10 works all over Europe for the last year and a half, actually starting in Berlin and then ending a couple of months ago in Basel. The crypto rave, well, it's basically what it says on the tin. It was a rave series that was orchestrated from a platform, which was a collective mining platform where each person could log in, and basically that would bring them to a collective Monero mining pool. And they had to at least mine for 11 hours before they got a QR code to the entry to the rave. Along that 11 hours, they would also be given the location, they would be given a new identity, their core group, and also whatever fit into that particular rave series at that point. The way that Omsk kind of worked with this idea is because our practice, although it does work with a lot of technological frameworks and platforms, we mostly work with role play. We call it real gameplay. It kind of comes from a LARP background, live action role play, which is mostly from the Nordic scene. What LARP does is have a tendency to work with a closed world system. So they role-play for a significant amount of time within a set game frame. There's something between these game frame spaces, so like the LARP world, and then what we would dub, I guess, as like reality, if there is such a thing. And if you think of these two spaces in like a Venn diagram scenario, so there's the reality, and then there's the LARP world, and then as they meet together, this is a space known as bleed, and it's when the two often mesh uncontrollably. That's really where we pit a lot of our work. So we aim to work within this bleed space, and that's because we hope to use role play as a platform for potentially using beta models through systems and participants to try out alternative spaces. So the crypto rave very much was a beta model of trying to engage a public that potentially wouldn't normally be involved in crypto, let alone the construct of crypto mining as a pool system, so collectively to put on an event. So in a sense, that was what we were trying to do with the Crypto Rave series. A lot of why we create these works is to create a sustainable collective, try to also work with viewers in the way that the viewer has just as much power as the artist or as the narrator, which is also slightly different to a LARP sentiment. And in a way, for us, the kind of narrative is very key to this. And I guess the why we started working with this, and particularly with the crypto space, was that we found that crypto has a lot of potential, but it sometimes gets locked into a space that is very heavy with its own lingo, its own social coding, its own societal framework. And sometimes that can be quite daunting for the wider public. So for us, it was really important to make those things accessible. So for example, to join the crypto rave, you literally just had to press one button that said mine. And we really tried to kind of break it down to the most accessible position. And I would say that these works are hopefully a gateway to then involving the wider public in a bigger debate. And of course also the characters that are given, or the roles, these are also sometimes potentially roles that that individual doesn't have any background knowledge about. So they also have to do a bit of research to be able to then come to the piece. And this also, I think, was very interesting for us, that then the knowledge didn't necessarily come for us, but it was individuals' preference to take that kind of studying format. We feel that a lot of our works are very much kind of rooted in political phenomena. I don't know whether we would necessarily call ourselves a political art group, but a lot of the speculative designed spaces that we use is maybe because we believe that metaphors and narratives sometimes carry better than ideas do. And sometimes instead of this format of like us talking to you, I think that it's kind of interesting sometimes to flux that and to allow it to be a much more collective, decentralized learning system. And I think also the way that these we're not asking for experts to be part of the crypto rave. It's also, I would say, crypto, blockchain, decentralized systems, these are not fixed states as yet. They require everybody to partake in them, and I think that's actually the only way that they will be successful, is by having a very, very diverse conversation about them. And I think that in a way, our works aim to create gestures, and hopefully those gestures then ricochet or bump against other gestures, and hopefully eventually find a pathway that they escape out into the world that we potentially call reality today.
Yeah, super interesting, cool. You touched already on a lot of, sorry, that was my personal excitement about your work. But I think you touched already on a lot of subjects that I think would be great for us to discuss, which is the imaginary or shared imaginary that crypto offers in some way, that money in general encapsulates, and crypto really deals with, or your artworks bring up as well. Jonas, maybe you want to take on?
Hello? Yeah, I can hear myself. Hey, I'm going to turn that off so I can hear, or maybe not. Let me try. So it's a funny system. Okay, we do like this. Okay, hey. Now it feels like we're in my living room. It's pretty nice, yeah. Yeah, so thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks so much for being here, and thanks to everyone who came. My name is Jonas Lund. I'm a visual artist, and I think the reason I'm sitting here is because of a work I created back in 2012, about a year and a half ago, which is called, yeah, it feels like it was a long time ago. Time goes fast, yeah. So, which was a work called the Jonas Lund Token, which is like a way for me to create a system in which I can incentivize participation in my artistic practice, pretty much. In this story I created then like the Jonas Lund token is an ERC20 token built on top of the Ethereum blockchain, which consists of a fixed amount of 100,000 tokens. And these tokens represent voting shares in my artistic practice. So one token equals one share equals one vote. Initially, the price of the token was tied to the price of Ethereum. I'm not really sure why at this point. It seemed logical at the time, but like in retrospect, it kind of made no sense. But so I've now disconnected it from this Ethereum price. Also, the first exhibition with Jonas Lund token was like on the 21st of March 2018. That's when it launched. At that time, Ethereum was valued at around $900. In the following 2 months after that show, it crashed down to like $150. Coincidence? Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe the Jonas Lund token was the thing that broke crypto. It could be. So in any case, like the tokens are voting shares. So if you're a holder, you get to vote on all things concerning my practice. For example, should I participate in a talk at Republica about cryptocurrency, yes or no? Should I do this exhibition, yes or no? How should I present this work? And then I make these proposals, and the people vote, and then I have to sort of follow. And currently of these 100,000, there are different distribution phases and stuff, and there's a lot of like technical steps to it. I think it's somehow part of me to make the different aspects of, let's say, commerce, like to build incentives in a financial and economical space, sort of real. The terms of ownership is like a 25-paragraph long text that explains everything that happens in different phases, and it becomes very technical. And you interface with the tokens on the website jlt.ltd through MetaMask. And for anyone who's used MetaMask, it's quite straightforward. For most collectors, it's really not straightforward. I think most token holders have never successfully managed to log in to the Jonas Lund token website. So in terms of like making things easily accessible, I think the Rave's interface was very good because it's basically one button. If you add 2 buttons, you lose half the people. If you add like 5 buttons, you get like 10%, maybe. I mean, you have to have some really motivated people if you have 5 steps. So part of the pipeline of developing Unison Token is to make this interface a lot easier. And in a way, like these shares, they exist on the blockchain because at the time it was, for me, the best and most practical tool available to distribute sort of tokens, to create certificates and create shares in my practice. So it's like the technology that makes the most sense. And it comes with the tagline of creating like a decentralized, autonomous, artistic practice. Eventually, once all these 100,000 tokens are distributed, I'll be able to kind of just like not work anymore because my practice will run by itself. Because once you have 1,000 tokens, you can also make proposals to the board, and there can be like a hostile takeover, and then they can continue, and then it's been totally like automized in a way. And there's a lot of different consequences, but I think I'll leave it at that, except ending on this tiny bit that there also is a Jonas Lund token bounty program where you can receive tokens for favors or trades, like inviting me to a talk, inviting me to a group show, inviting me to a solo show, writing a positive review of an exhibition, posting on Instagram. All of these things comes with different types of incentives and different types of rewards. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it.
All right, cool. So, Martina, maybe you want to share a few thoughts about the 2 artists' practice before we jump into a conversation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also from my part, thank you for having me here. So I come more from, I have also an artistic part, but also a scientific research part, and there I'm specialized in art and technology, performative and digitality. And right now I'm writing on a book on critique and digital cultures. And what I found out is that we are like in a very state of connectivity. And even if we make critique, like it's a data critique, it's a machinic critique, we do it just to be connected. The more we critique, the better we are connected. So this is a problem in a way, because sometimes we like to have like distance and think about things. And so for me, my interest was to look at the works just presented by Penny and Jonas, to see, because they go so deeply into the systems and into these parts of digital cultures, if they propose like a kind of reflection, a kind of distance, a kind of critique, or if they are just eaten by the system. You just said in the end of your presentation, there could be like people coming to the board, and your work become automatized, and then you are finished, or you do another thing. So, and my other field is about art and technology, so performances. And what I found out there since the 1960s, all these people like our beloved John Cage, David Tudor, a lot of people working in art space, is that what they created is a be in and be happy. So be in resonance, be in drug-like states, in psychedelic art. So also to be in and to be like unmediated, so connected. And then the big idea is that we are in a post-human performance, a post-human state of being with the world, saving the world or the earth against the Anthropocene, and finding states to be together and to live in diversity, and to keep away the subject. So, and then what I found in the 2 pieces, I start with Jonas' work because this I found first. For me, there's what we could discuss is the whole question of speculation, because digital cultures are in a way very speculative cultures, not only in economy but also even in technology. Our internet, all the networks are based on speculation. So the data packages are speculate on where to go the best way to come through. And so I think, in a way, what I understood from your work, you are completely in, and you give yourself in, and you are eaten, in a way, by the system. And at the same time, when I see there's a turn in your work, so that we come to kind of reflection. And then, for me, the point was that art is as good or bad as the people who pay for it. This is, in a way, what you are going to do. And in the work of Omsk and Penny, I found a relation to immersion. There's a lot of performances, like immersive performances, but it's much more radical in a way, because, as you said before, you are working with the people. People are like co-creators. You are creating together. So for me, it was of course, what is an alternative world, another world to do business, to do market, sociality, and mediation. And what I saw is ambivalence. So it's like, because I found in one text in this massive internet that for one performance or one project you decided which people could take place and which people could not take place, and there was like
take part.
Sorry, and there was a person who made like a receipt about his how he lived the performance, the rave or the action, and he said, yeah, then I knew what to do, and then I was looking for the whole time for this person, but perhaps this person wasn't there, I don't know. So he was like going to resistance. Yes, I go with this, but so there's like a participation with a lack of decision making. You participate, you make decisions, and there's a lack of decision making. So I thought it's like a training camp to get resistance, to come to a very individual. Because I'm a very Bertolt Brecht person, so if I'm asked to join, then I'm but this I found very interesting. So you are in, you have immersion, and at the same time, while being in, you have to ask a lot of questions. So this ambivalence of being in order to have glimpses of being out. And this for me was the same in Jonas' work, to go in and to give people points of reflection, to use another system, to use a system to make another economy, another kind of art, democracy, and all the things we lose already because the digital cultures are not what we hoped they should be, but to get glimpses of reflection. So this was mine.
I think that you really exactly pinpointed the things that I wanted to discuss with you guys. I thought that it's really interesting that blockchain has. There were a lot of people in the audience that said that actually they don't really exactly know what blockchain is, but I hope through the conversation that it became a little bit clearer. So it is connected to, I guess the most obvious manifestation of blockchain was Bitcoin, or is Bitcoin, about to expire, but it was Bitcoin. But it has a discourse around it of, on the one hand, a complete utopia, and on the other side, a complete dystopia. And I think that it's interesting that your works, in the sense of what Martina mentioned, in this like giving yourself up to this kind of psychedelic experiences, losing control, somehow relates to those two aspects. To, for example, in Omsk, in the role play. Then there is this sense of, it's kind of borderline dystopian, utopian environments. And I think, Jonas, in your work, this touch on corporate culture, in a way, the language that you use in your work is also exactly on that border of kind of dystopian and utopian. And I thought maybe you want to reflect on that a little bit also in relation to what Martina was saying.
Blockchain is. It's very hard to find anything in this world that's not utopian and dystopian, right? But I don't even know if I agree with this binary necessarily. I think that we live in a world where literally the human is exploding. The idea of humanity is exploding. In essence, I would say that we live more in a state of Ouroboros, of the utopian and the dystopian. I think that's what makes it actually so complicated. If it was so easy to register the utopian as a singular, then I think we would be things would be a lot more accelerationist towards it. I think that in the state of role-playing, it's something for us that what we try to create is that, there is a set of parameters always, but actually with a lot of the text that we put out and the workshops that we do prior, a lot of those are actually built around the individual pushing back against those borders. So although we give perimeters, we always encourage that the individual pushes back against them. And I think that in essence, we are run by a system of anarchists, actually. I mean, I do think that all of the societal powers are anarchists, but they just don't want anybody else to be anarchists. And all the bosses that we've ever had in this world, they've been bandits, but they don't want anybody else to be bandits either. And I would say that kind of two roles as well that really exist. And we always kind of play out the villagers somehow. And I think that what we're trying to do with our work is allow people to potentially participate in a form of revolting against an implied system of immersion, revolting against their self, revolting against their community, which can actually be a utopian action. I think revolt is not necessarily a dystopian sentiment. And also as far as blockchain and crypto, and to speak a little bit about what I think has the most potential to it, is not actually its economic drive. I would say that it's decentralization, the factor that it's written in code that is actually available, that there is a privacy level to it. I mean, if we could combine blockchain, crypto, and mesh networks, I think we would live in a very different world to the one that we're using right now. Just in relation to this post-human context, I think this is also something that our work really revolves around, because I would argue that actually there never has been a future of post-human since the Industrial Revolution. I think that we've been so interconnected with the machinic, and that's not just from a device position, it's not from a materialistic position. Our emotions, our subcultures, they're connected through machinic tendencies. I mean, when I think of the crypto rave, it's not the Monero mining pool that connects us. It is in the way that it facilitates, but actually the thing that connects us is the Function One sound system. It's the Ableton Live that creates the techno tracks. It's the computer that plays it. Like, these are all industrial technological machines, and they create euphoria, they create bliss, they create bodies moving together, tempos, they create connections in the dark. Like, these are emotional spaces, and I think that is maybe for my perspective a more interesting conversation when we think about technology. It's like, what is the emotional position of technology, and how much does that affect our communities and our structures? And of course that then can go on to speaking about economy or labor or power, but I think we have to start from the individual, actually.
Hi. Okay, so answering your questions, I'm not sure. That was nice. Okay, no, okay, fine. I focus. So, in like two different aspects, I think. One in terms of the critique, and other of the systems, and maybe on the blockchain. I think, for me, I think of my work always as being critical towards something, but at the same time embracing it. So it's sort of also this binary. I think there's very little evidence or imagination for utopia these days, so maybe that binary doesn't exist much. It's more like dystopia wherever you look, especially within the contemporary network systems we operate in today, at least for me. I think the critique, yeah, it's there. At the same time, I get critique for my critique by my friends saying like, okay, so you can critique neoliberalism all you want, but we all know it, and like you accomplish nothing. So he says there's no like embrace or critique. There's only brace. Like,
Brace position.
but I still want to critique it because it sucks. So I can defend my critique in that sense. I think for me, what I try and do all the time is kind of. Like you have to operate within the system in order to be able to critique it from the inside. I think there's the famous quote by Douglas Rushkoff where it's the title of a book, which is like the program or be programmed. So either you understand how the system works or you become a sort of slave to it, which I think is very relevant today in terms of like how little you know about what all the like giant platforms know about you. Like this information asymmetry has some really devastating effects on the political and social systems in terms of what it produces for a kind of political situation, like which we can see with Trump, which we can see with Brexit, which we can see like all over Cambridge Analytica, etc. That's one part of it, I think, which I think we kind of know-ish, maybe not. I think, and the second part, blockchain, yeah, it's like the ideology of it is wonderful, I think, for me. Like the decentralization, I agree, it's like that's the promise. Like practically today, I don't have much faith in it at all, really. I don't know. I'm part ignorant and part just like inherently negative towards all new technologies. That's why I also didn't buy Bitcoin in 2010, which was stupid. And then maybe smart, but then maybe mostly stupid if it's the finance you want. So I'm not sure, yeah. I don't know, like I'm asking everyone, every time I'm on a cryptocurrency panel or anywhere crypto meetup, I'm asking all my friends or like people like here, it's like, okay, but give me like 3 examples of the use of a blockchain technology where it makes 100% sense over a normal database. Where I feel, and the only example I know is like gamification, like in games for like unique digital objects that have been produced within a game and then can be traded across games. That's the only one I know offhand, which I think like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, maybe I end there and we continue.
Maybe I can give an example. Sorry, Martina, do you want to... I just wanted to contribute maybe to what you said. I actually found a quote from a musician that I think you collaborated with, Penny, Matt Dryhurst. He said, the magic of blockchains and smart contracts for me is the ability to encode ideology into the things that you create. And I think that this is kind of maybe the magic or also the greatest threat in using blockchain, because it's so easy to inscribe it into this technology, to basically give over control to these systems. And I think actually it's funny because at the end, in a way, Penny, you mentioned that in the Raves, that you do aim to create this connectivity between people. I mean, you do think in a way, still in a quite optimistic way about our interaction with technology or our shared life with technology, maybe. Whereas, Jonas, I think you were a bit more on the antagonistic side towards technology. And yeah. Sorry, Martina, you wanted to...
Yeah, for me it was very interesting, your reflections on the emotional part. first of all, this was for you the most important. What kind of emotional space is given by technology, and perhaps to just mention the post-human narrative and discourse. We have always been techno-human, or this is not new, but the post-human always means more than human. This is this idea that we are together, that we can use technology in order to, as you said, to come together, to share something, and to come in a certain emotional state, to be open in a way, to share, to be together, and to find perhaps subconsciousness or whatever states, to open ourselves and to go away from the subject. And I'm not a fan of critique. Studying on critique, I saw that critique is the most awful kind of power, and it invented the subject. So now we lose the subject, and so the question is, what can we do if we want to find like resistance? And this, you said also that, as I understood, that we have this individual resistance, fighting, being in and fighting. And for me, this is the new format, the new paradigm, being in. And only by being in, we find something like resistance or thinking about, and this also for the work of Jonas. At the same time, what I'm a bit, because I'm a very discourse analytic, Foucauldian, old-fashioned people person, this is just in the moment when we have this connectivity. And I think that digital cultures are hyper-connective. They are working on a cooperation in the operative sense between human beings and technology. Then we come up with all these discourses like post-human, being together, being in resonance, and this since the 1960s, in order to save the world and to go against colonial and all the stuff. What does this mean to us? You know what I mean? Just in the moment where we have this connectivity on a subconsciousness level, because we are always in the algorithms. We can't go out. And for me, this was when I read about Jonas' work, I asked myself, does he sleep? How does he feel? Because you're so in this performance of the algorithms of the speculation, and speculation is like a drug in a way. You are always in future. You are always in a speed. I don't take drugs, but it may be that being on drugs may be a bit like this, speedy, heavy, busy, and but you are a very chilled person at the same time. So this is my question in a way. So we have this new kind of resistance to push people in and to bring them to an individual resistance, and at the same time we are like helping the digital culture system with all our discourses and our art. Because what they need, our infrastructures, is just our data. So if you are producing a lot of data, and I read somewhere that you said Bitcoin is in a way a shit because it takes so much of energy, and so there could be more intelligent solutions. So this, for me, this is like the ambivalence, but it's at the same time we have to do this to find resistance, and we feed our data systems and our infrastructures at the same time. Perhaps we have to live with this. Then it's okay.
I think what you're saying kind of resonates for me when I was looking at your works. Then that the way that you approach your participants, in the sense of that you require some trust from your participants, like, we're going to play this game together. And but on the other hand, I ask myself, I think with Jonas, I think it's more clear that you also allow yourself, or the rules of the game also clarify that you can also break the rule of the game. I mean, you're inviting people to participate in your game. You're creating this kind of like shared trust, but on the other hand, you still keep the ownership over what is the token. And I think that it's a little similar also in Omsk, in your work, that even though it is participatory, it's open for everyone. I mean, you are the ones who decide on the scenario of like the Rave, for example, no, or the rules that you need to mine for 11 hours. And then, I mean, also from my personal experience in one of your games, that it was I was not sure, is there going to be a moment that somebody is going to break my trust, and I'm giving myself into it, and I don't have any promises that I'll be safe, that it's really a safe zone. And I think it's interesting in that sense in both of your works. I don't know if that's like an intentional choice, or how much you decide on that kind of an approach to participation.
Yeah, I can definitely say with Omsk that in a way we're incredibly optimistic with this trust system, because, and actually I would say that it's not only the players that are vulnerable, we are extremely vulnerable, because whatever the players do in that space infinitely reflects on us. Like, if somebody decided to burn down this building right now, it wouldn't necessarily be the player that would be held responsible. It would be us, actually. And in the same way, when there's a group of people participating in that space, and I mean, we do have safe codes that are given to every player before they come in, so we're not completely chucking people in without a safe code space. But where like our background is from the left-wing scene, it's from communities, squatting spaces, political action spaces, and that relies on so much inner trust. And I think that typically we've lost touch with that. And actually, I think the only way that really trust comes is that if that every single person makes themselves vulnerable, trust generally, hypothetically, comes out. Because you're as vulnerable as X, Y, Z. And I think that's also how I would understand Jonas's token as well, that he is just as vulnerable as the shareholders would be, perhaps even more so, in a sense.
But maybe, Jonas, you ask people to sign contracts. Like, they sign a really, really long legal contract.
That's the smart contract, right? So, like, actually the trust is inherent in the protocol, which is practical in correlation with the terms of ownership. So basically it's somehow removing this from being the personal trust, rather, so then it's encoded in the token trust. I think, like, if I think of my work, and I set up a lot of rules, like the rules to stand in for the trust, or to be the anchor in the trust. You say, like, you share these rules together, and these are the rules of engagement. But I mean, it's not all unlike, let's say, the structure of any social network. Like, there's rules. But then at any given time, Mark Zuckerberg may decide, okay, I'm going to change the rules. And then all of a sudden, everyone who trusted him go like, wait a minute. So for sure, there's the risk of that too.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, definitely.
Do you have any rule on how many shares I could own?
No.
So technically, if I actually bought 90% of your shares...
Yeah.
I could.
Hostile takeover, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Which, of course, this is...
Can she call herself Jonas?
I mean, I like that aspect a lot, because there's some risk to it, in a way. And then there is also consequences to this risk, And if there is no risk, there's no reward, maybe. I don't know. That's not true. It doesn't have to be a risk. But I mean, I think it raises the stakes, There's actually something there. And of course, there's procedures in place for me to mitigate this risk, but still. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting to think of trust in the relation of this, like, especially if you think of not the trust that we can experience now, like being in this panel, but the trust you would feel operating within any network, with new technology, being the recipient of the judgment from opaque algorithms. You have no idea how you feel. I don't know, like, for me, using the internet today, there's a complete erosion of trust. I trust no one. Like no one. I'm like Fox Mulder in X-Files. Trust no one. Like don't trust anybody, because like, I mean, I'm aware of this. Every time I go to a website, I know this is gonna feed into the advertising profile target model of who they think I am, and then tomorrow I get ads for whatever garbage I accidentally clicked on. So I know I'm like the target, So then how could I feel trust? Like,
but what about in the dark web, for example?
Yeah, that's fine. It's just too slow.
It's much more trustworthy. But
yeah,
really,
indeed,
it's much more trustworthy.
Yes, yeah, for sure, because it's not ad-driven, basically. Yeah.
Actually, we are almost at the end of our panel, guys, which is really sad because it was getting really fun now.
Could we just go back to this quote?
Yes, for
Matt Dryhurst.
Yeah, because I think I had like
the
a
ideology.
bit of problem with it.
Yeah, yes, if I want to ask, is he here? No. I just want to ask, first of all, if not, maybe there is some questions in the audience, and if not, I have a lot of more questions that I want to ask the guys, but there are questions. Okay, so yes, first, sorry, is it okay that we first go
it's
for
fine.
questions?
Can I read it again? Because maybe I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. Just my question. So, from your experience in the crypto area, between art and tech, are there still some things left that you saw on your journey that is worth exploring for the future, for you or for somebody to pass on, kind of an idea to look at or something? Like, is there something to explore still for you, or did you saw something worth exploring?
Is this to me in particular?
Both of you, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally at the moment, and we're developing a work that works with an online and offline space of intimacy, and whether tech can actually deliver intimacy, and how those collectives work with trust, and normally like the 5 pillars of intimacy, so emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical, and experimental. And I think that's, for me, very interesting at the moment. Like, is there platforms and moduses that can start really connecting with perhaps the more kind of psyche of the individual and transfer that to the collective. So that's something that I'm really interested in at the moment. And then also we're working on a piece that will hopefully, in the same way that we felt opened up crypto, or particularly, I mean, maybe more Monero pool mining, I would say, rather than like crypto, because I think that what we did isn't actually really referencing like Ethereum or blockchain, because we were working with it in a very different space. Like, we were trying to collectively manifest enough currency that we could put on a collective event, and it wasn't really about this speculative or risk space. But what I'm really interested in, and I think what Omsk is really trying to work with, is another piece that we can work with mesh networks, for example. And particularly, I think that that's a very important crisis point in our current society, like the state of the internet. So if we can create a piece that opens up a much more accessible conversation about using mesh networks.
Okay. I would just answer quickly too. There's a couple of things which I think are exciting. I mean, from personally, in terms of the Jonas Lund token, I'm like still in the distribution of this, which I'm like still very excited about, trying to get rid of as many as possible to really distribute agency, like to really kind of take it to its end to see if you can incentivize strategic decision making with financial incentives, let's say. And I think in the larger scale of crypto or blockchain, I think if Ethereum switches to proof of stake, which is the mining protocol, that will be super interesting to see how they solve that algorithm, because it's very complicated, but still kind of consensus building without proof of work will be very interesting. There's an American guy called Arthur Brock who made his own blockchain called the Holochain, which his perspective is super interesting on like what a currency represents. He thinks of it as a current that you can see, like thinking of a wide range of different values that can be represented by different types of currencies. I mean, I think it's like a total different take, and he, I mean, that would be someone to look up, I think.
Here is much more exciting, by the way. They're just pretending to have fun. We're really having fun here. Anyone else has any questions? Oh, sorry.
Just give me a sign and I will come to you with the microphone.
But also, I hate this format of like, you ask a question, we answer it, we get the last word. Do you have anything, like, did we answer
Statements
it? Do you have
also.
anything else? Or okay, good. Just checking.
Thank you for pointing that out. Very important.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
In terms of the mining?
But I can't hear it.
Can I ask you a question?
I can hear you.
You can hear me now? Okay, cool. But I have to talk like this. So in terms of the mining, the Monero, was that financing the crypto raves? Did you make enough money so it was like self-sustainable?
Of course we did.
Yeah, cool. Nice.
Sorry.
We can hear.
Can you hear me? I can't hear. And if I drop the tech.
Talk to the microphone.
I dropped the tech and now it's not working. Okay. Yeah, actually, I mean, we had a few beautiful fans and patrons that ran our site through their rigs. That helped a lot. Yeah, but yeah.
Actually, that's connected to also. I wanted to talk a little bit about the art market. The art market. And actually, yeah, if your approach to crypto and your work with the blockchain how much realistically was that a solution for an alternative financial system for you? And we are in a panel about currencies of beauty, and that was our subject supposedly. But yeah, if that was at any point a real intention to develop kind of an alternative financing system for your work.
As far as like the collective mining, I would say that is not a viable system for an artist. But I would also say that perhaps rather naively and optimistically, when we created Omsk, we never thought we'd be able to finance it. We never actually thought that people were going to want to participate in it. We thought it was going to be a completely speculative fail. But in the last 2 years, we've had over 4,000 people participate. So I think for us, because of what certain people have felt and participated within, like we've actually been donated a lot of money to keep working with what we're doing, because I mean, in essence, our practice is entirely immaterial. We really don't agree with the pay-to-play sentiment. We want to make it open and accessible for all. And so, in a way, we have the worst business model available on the art market. But we're still here. Luck. Which is also kind of interesting when we talk about speculation, right? Because I think like the free market really is successful because it's driven on luck. And it's driven on dreams in a way. And I think that's sort of a similar rhetoric to how we've formed our practice. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. just a nitpick, just because why not? But if you don't believe in pay to play, last time I went to a crypto rave, I paid for it by at least 11 hours of my CPU.
True.
So.
And it's true.
What do you say? I'm joking.
Well,
I mean, of course, it's an alternative economy. Let's call
it's an alternative economy, and also, in essence, what we could have done is, of course, like completely faked it, right? We don't have to have a Monero pool. We could have graphically simulated that space, but I think that. Okay, you got me.
It's okay. That wasn't the purpose, but it's more like. I mean, I think about it like. If you're talking about the market, you know, like and if you're talking about an art market, and I'm thinking about it like the pay-to-play model applies, you know. So in a way, I don't know what to think about it, but I think like art market, alternative economies, tricky. I think my favorite example of someone who is making this work today is Brad Trammell with his Patreon. I don't know, do you follow this?
Yeah.
It's like an American artist who sort of not necessarily rejected the art market, but found an alternative revenue stream by relying on Patreon for access to his private Instagram account and like Art World reports and stuff. And I think he makes around like $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 a month.
There's also a German version now.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I forgot.
Oh, like of Patreon?
Yeah, of Patreon, yeah.
Not of the artist.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
just
last words, yeah.
Yeah, no.
No, sorry, I didn't mean.
So, about economy and systems to earn money, economic systems, I think you both have, this is an economic system in a way. He's functioning, and I don't know, perhaps capitalism is always eating it. But it's like this. When I studied in archive about Gerd Stern and ASCO, US company from the 1960s, and they had been creating spaces, not playing games and so on, but hyper emotional spaces and so on. And then 10 years later, he made with the same aesthetic Werbung.
Advertisement
With the same aesthetic for Coca-Cola, for big pencils. And I thought, yeah, that's like this. And then, so what you can do is do some things for a certain time, and then we have like a mark, and a marker, and like a image, a brand
yeah.
to sell it and to live on it. And then we have to change. And there are some people who change, and some people who don't change. And I like the people who change.
Okay, so I really want to thank our three panelists. It was really, really cool. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you guys also enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, I did want to recommend, because this is the subject that actually we came to speak about. I don't know if everybody knows already the book Art After Money, Money After Art, from Max Haven. He published it the end of last year, and he touches exactly on the stuff that we were talking about, which is really cool. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
TL.